everybody, hope things are going well on your trap line and wherever you are. Here in the Ozarks we have another ice storm getting ready to come through tonight and tomorrow, so that'll probably mess things up for a bit. But that's part of it. I guess it could be significantly worse. It's been not a pretty warm and pretty dry winter relatively compared to last year, so not complaining so much. So today I wanted to talk about something that's a little bit different. Today I want to talk about being in a trapping slump. So raise your hand if you've been in a trapping slump before. I think we all have. Even professional trappers get into trapping slumps. We all do. I know here, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, which is really kind of what gave me the idea to do this little video, is I think I went like 5 days in a row without catching any coyotes, without really having any activity coyote-wise. I caught one bobcat and I think maybe one coon or maybe a possum. I mean, very little critters at all. No coyotes, no nothing. I'm just going from empty trap to empty trap to empty trap to empty trap to empty trap. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, what is going on? And I mean, I'm human, just like everyone out there is human. And I think we all experience this. And we all probably don't always want to admit it. But what do we start thinking when we've gone 5 days and we got nothing but empty traps? I'm not really counting a coon and a possum. So, I mean, I'm after coyotes. If I'm not catching coyotes, then what am I doing, right? So, you know, you start really kind of second guessing yourself. And it starts to creep into your head about, man, I really thought that I at least had this a little bit figured out. Now, obviously, we are learning how to trap for our entire lives. And if you think you really know what you're doing trapping, then you probably need to reevaluate what you're doing. But you know what I'm saying, when you think you kind of have some idea what's going on, you know the coyotes are still outsmarting you, you know you still have a lot to learn, you're reading, you're trying to get better at your trapping, but at least it's not like you're a beginner, you at least have some idea of what's happening, right? Most of us are probably in that category, where we're kind of in that middle ground. We're not a novice, a beginner, but we're not a professional. We're kind of in that middle ground. Some of us are more confident than others. Some of us catch more critters than others, but we're all just learning in that middle ground. And but what's happens when all of a sudden you're doing good, and then boom, that slump hits. Slumps hit everybody, whether you're a professional athlete, doctor, lawyer. I think we all have slumps at work, where times where things aren't going right. I know as a mountain guide, we see this with clients and we refer to it as the quitting conversation. And what that is it's self-doubt that starts creeping in. It's that little conversation that you start having with yourself. At least in the mountains, it goes like this. It goes, you know, I've done really good so far, I've got this far, I've got really high up on this mountain. Is it really necessary for me to get to the top of this mountain? My friends are going to totally be okay with me. I mean, I've done really good up at this point, done way better than most people. My family's going to be okay, my wife's going to be okay, my husband's going to be okay, whatever it is. I don't really have anything to prove to anybody. If I go back down now, I can get back in my tent, get back in my sleeping bag. You know, the Sherpas will fix me some soup and some hot tea, and I don't have to be cold anymore, and I don't have to be, you know, barely able to breathe, and I'm in the cold, and I'm in the wind, and I'm in the dark, and I'm out here tied to a rope to these other people, and I got my headlamp on, I can't hardly see anything, it's just me walking on the ice. Do I really want to be here? And you talk yourself into really not finishing. Well, that self-doubt, that creeping self-doubt, what we call the quitting conversation in the mountains, it comes out in all aspects of our life, whether it's that girl that we don't ask out because we're a little worried that maybe she'll say no, or whatever it is, right? We don't put in for that promotion, we don't change jobs from a job that we hate because we're a little scared to. That's just part of being a human, is having fear. But the thing about being successful, and I think most aspects of life, is overcoming those personal fears and trapping is no different. So what happens when that self-doubt starts creeping in on the trap line? You start thinking, man, I must not know as much as I thought. Maybe you start second guessing what you're doing. Am I setting the wrong sets? Is my location bad? Is my bait bad? Is my lure bad? And then you start changing things and you start reading and listening more. And nowadays it's really easy to get into that self-doubt because we have social media. And you go on there and you see all these other people that are catching critters and they're telling you all about all the great catches they had today. What they're not showing you is the 50 traps that they checked where they didn't have anything either. Or you watch some video with Mark June or Clint Locklear or somebody else that's catching, you know, hundreds of cats or hundreds of coyotes and whatever. But what you're not understanding is they may have 200 traps out and 400 snares out, and they're in, you know, Texas or western Nebraska or somewhere, and apples is not always the same when it comes to, like, for me, trapping in the Ozarks and trapping out west and trapping in Texas, two completely different animals, right? If you're trapping in the east, completely different than trapping out west. But we see that in social media, and we let that get to us even more, and pretty soon we're really starting to doubt ourselves. And then we're making changes and we're doing things and we're really not confident in our own abilities. And when you're not confident in your own abilities, that will show through, and then your slump will last longer. So what do I do? That's probably what you're asking right now is, okay, smart ass, what do you do when you're in a slump? You know, it's very simple for me. I just double down on hard work. So if I got 25 traps out and I'm in a slump, I'm going to put out some more traps. I'm going to put out another 2 or 3 a day. If I'm checking traps at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to check my traps, and then I'm going to put out a couple, 3 more before I go to work. Or I'm going to come home and I'm going to put them out in the dark at night after work. I'm just going to double down on hard work, because hard work and being confident in what you're doing will eventually pull you out of that slump way quicker than if you start tinkering and changing and doing all things. Now, with that being said, I'll give you an example. I had this 5 days I was talking about, and then I started thinking logically. And I started putting more traps in and just doubled down on work, right? Because work ethic has a tendency to overcome most things. The most talented people in the world are not always successful because they don't have really good work ethic. And my dad told me at a young age, and I think this is proved to be true, is you don't have to be all that smart. You just have to work harder than everybody else, and if you do that, you'll be successful. So I just double down on work. You mean to tell me I can't work harder than a coyote? I'm just going to double down. I'm going to work. I'm going to work. I'm going to work. I'm going to work. I'm going to keep putting more traps in. I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to work myself out of that slump. But I'm also going to be logical. So I started thinking, well, what am I doing? I've caught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of coyotes. I obviously know that I can catch some coyotes, but what am I doing different? And the answer is I wasn't doing anything different. So then I started thinking, well, what about my location? I've trapped here before, and I've caught coyotes here. I'm trapping on sign. I'm just not catching them. What's different? And then I kind of came up with an idea, and I said, you know, I've trapped here. This is my 3rd year in a row of trapping on this place. And I started thinking, I think I've pretty much used the same baits and lures for the last 2 years trapping here. I don't really think I've changed it up much on this particular location. So then what did I do? I completely changed. Fortunately, I had some more bait and lure in my cabinet back here, and I completely changed. I went from a bunch of cave-in stuff I was using, like Hiawatha Valley and some other things. I had 2 or 3 different baits I was using, 2 from Cave-In and 1 Hoosier Trapper Supply Top Dog. So those were the 3 that I was using, and I know I'd used the Cave-In's products there before on this farm for the last couple years. So I completely changed it up, and I went to some predator control groups, started using some Federales, started using some Dunlap Soul Taker, completely different kinds of stuff. More bobcat based stuff over here, and now I'm using muskrat, and that Federales has got this like really smoky smell to it. Completely changed it up, okay? So once I actually made that change of using some different baits, and then I also completely changed my lures, within a day or 2, I started catching coyotes again. So I basically worked myself out of that slump by doing some hard work and just trying to put some logic and some reasoning into what I was doing, because sometimes, in this case, I added to my slump. I knew better than to do that. All I had to do was go back and check last year's spreadsheet, and I would have seen what base I used, and I would have switched them up. That was just an error on my part, or as some people would say, I paid the dumb tax for that. But sometimes you haven't done anything. There's no logical reason to why you're in a slump. Sometimes coyotes are just going to walk past your sets, and it doesn't matter what bait you have in there, it doesn't matter what lure you have in there, it doesn't matter what kind of set you're using. They're just going to do it, because who knows why. They're thinking about, I don't know what they're thinking about, their 401k account, or I don't know what they think about, okay? I just know that sometimes I've seen it over and over and over again. They'll just walk right past my set. And I've seen them do it 2 or 3 times and not show any interest in it. And then other times they go right to it. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to what is in a coyote's head. And if anybody tells you that they understand everything there is to know about a coyote, definitely take that with a grain of salt, because they are just different creatures and you just don't know what they're going to do. But generally overall, when you get into a slump, and we all will, you can work your way out of it just by being patient, by not second guessing yourself, not having that quitting conversation with yourself in your head, and trying to make dramatic changes in what you were doing. Make maybe small logical based changes, but don't make changes based on fear and frustration and just being in that slump. So that's my advice when it comes to being in a slump. That's what I do when I'm trying to get myself out of a slump, and it's going to happen to all of us. I mean, there's going to be times that, you know, things just aren't going to go well. Maybe it's the weather, maybe it's just the coyotes being coyotes, maybe it's the bait, the lure, maybe it's nothing, maybe it's bad location, who knows? But there's going to be times, so you just got to learn to weather those. And then what I have found is, sometimes in trapping, I call it feast or famine. And you know, the really, really, really good trappers are very consistent. They have less feast, they have less famine. They're just consistent every day, you know. And when things are going well for me, it's like every day, a couple coyotes here, coyote or 2 there, another coyote here. I mean, every day it's like I'm racking up 1, 2, 3 coyotes a day. That's when the numbers start going up. Even if you just catch 1 coyote a day, think about it. That's 7 coyotes a week, 28 coyotes a month, times 2.5 months. Well, you're up around 60 coyotes if you just catch 1 a day. So those, and you're consistent, the numbers really start to rack up. If you do have those really feast days where you catch 3 or 4 or 5 coyotes in a day, then you can have some famine days and get through those slumps and still come out with some decent catch numbers at the end of the season. So don't let it get you down. Just keep plugging away, hard work, just keep plugging along, and don't let the coyotes win. Just add more sets and just keep chugging along. Don't second guess what you're doing. Make catastrophic, dramatic changes. Tweak little small things and just keep working harder. So hope that helps. Shall no slumps come your way the rest of the season, and we'll talk to you guys soon.